Okay, so as I was writing this paper, I realized how multi-layered this conflict and its relationship with foreignization in this particular performance and in the play itself is. So I will have to, because of 20 minutes, focus on one issue, and that is in particular the dissonance. So I'm just shifting that, looking at one of those layers of this conflict. The relationship between foreign and national has always played a key part in socio-political and cultural debates and was shaped by national memory. However, lately, the positioning of foreign against the national while playing upon and manipulating national memory seems to be particular at the forefront of the discussions. Targowica here, so the Polish sign, Stop Targowicy, refers to 1792 Confederation of Polish magnates opposing Polish constitution and asking Russia for help, which ultimately led to Poland's loss of independence and disappearance from the map. The image here makes the link between that and the EU interference in Polish government's undemocratic activities, with EU demonized through memory of Polish-Russian history. What a place to speak about it. The title of the 2011 Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the leader of Polish Law and Justice Party, book, Poland of Our Dream, has been recently stated as the aim that the previous governments abandoned and the current government is working towards. Yay! The UK, USA or Poland are only some of examples of how national memory is being manipulated to create a romanticized dream about once great nation eaten up by foreign influences, but now possible to achieve through building metaphorical or, like in Hungary, physical wall and blocking any foreign influences. In Poland, this romantic idea links on the one hand with Poland's refusal to accept any refugees, and with the general turn to the ideals of the 19th century Romanticism, during which Poland fought for independence from Russia, Prussia and Austria. As recently observed by Professor Maria Janin, one of the most eminent Polish literature and culture scholars, Poland is witnessing the, quote, turn to the culture of the fallen epigon Romanticism, the canon of and I practiced gigonoistic and sanctimonious stereotypes. I am recalling these words because the play I will be discussing is often described as a neo-romantic drama due to its composition and engagement with romantic themes like the idea of Polish nation, Polish fight for national independence, the role of artist as a spiritual leader of the nation, and its multiple references to Polish romantic literature and drama. Stanisław Wyspiański and his Wesele. What? I was trying to be fancy, was I? What's happened? Okay, no. Stanisław Wyspiański's Wesele was written and premiered in 1901, and it is one of the treasures of Polish national heritage and one of the most known Polish dramas. One studies this verse drama in primary education and secondary education in literature classes. It was adapted into a movie by the late Andrzej Wajda, an honorary Oscar-winning Polish director. In the 21st century, there has been already at least 44 new professional productions of Wesele. Stanisław Wyspiański was a Polish playwright, poet, painter, scenographer, and theater director, often described as the creator of modern Polish theater, whose ideas for socially and politically involved monumental theater were famously expressed in his poem I Still See Their Faces. And there is a translation here, so I will read both texts. Teatr mój widzę ogromny, wielkie powietrzne przestrzenie, ludzie je pełnią i cienie, ja jestem grze ich przytomny. And for the back rows, I see my theatre enormous, great air spaces, performed by people and shadows, and I am their place witness. And the colors mark the rhyming scheme. Wesele in Polish, a wedding party, is set at the wedding celebration of the city-born groom and the village-born bride. The play was inspired by the actual wedding that Wyspiański attended, and the characters were inspired by the actual guest of the wedding, in many cases the cream of artistic and social circles. I mean the human characters here, because the individual guests at the wedding party are also visited by the ghosts from Polish history and legends. These ghosts haunt the characters. For example, Marysia sees apparition of her lover who died before they were married. The journalist sees Stańczyk, Polish court jester known for its wisdom and patriotism, who becomes the voice of journalist conscience as the journalist works in a newspaper that supports Austrian powers. The appearance of ghosts reveals cracks in the realist setting, and the reality and fantasy slowly blend together, with the final ghost, Wernechora, as pointed out by Jan Nowakowski, confirming his own realness through objects he leaves behind him: golden horseshoe, golden horn, and feathered cap. The horn is supposed to give a call to a national uprising, but it is lost by Jasiek when he bends for the feathered cap. The chance is lost, and the play ends with the strawman taking charge over everyone, disarming them and charming them to dance to his lethargic, hypnotic music. This is not the first time dancing appears in the play. This is a wedding party, after all. And as pointed out by Wojciechowski, verse structure of Wesele mirrors the rhythms of Polish national and folk dances. Majority of lines are 8 syllables long and with doggerel rhymes, and they often are written in trochaic or dactylic meter. The octosyllabic trochę in Poland was at the time associated with musicality and folklore. The dactyl has the same rhythmical pattern as Polish national dance Polonez. The dancing was also a major dramaturgical feature of Wajda's movie's adaptation. Chrome. No, not this one. So that's the expectation of traditional staging as well. That was just a second, but thank you. How do I come back? Sorry.
Ah, wonderful. He appears.
And I'm continuing. Wesele is a picture of a Polish society painted through realist, symbolic and expressionist tools. And as pointed out by Nowakowski, the promise of authenticity, in fact the announcement that the characters were based on the well-known people, caused a lot of gossips and turmoil before the opening night, broken by the unexpected fantastical elements slipping through the cracks of the realist setting of the peasant cottage, played an important part in the audience falling completely silent at the end of its premiere before rapturous applause. I'm highlighting this idea of cracks as they will become very important in my argument. Wyspiański was in his 30s when writing Wesele. So was Radosław Rychcik when his staging, who he also adapted the text for, premiered in January this year at the Śląski Theatre in Katowice. Rychcik is known for his intercultural engagement with Polish romantic texts, most famously perhaps in Adam Mickiewicz Dziady, in which he used icons of American culture to translate it, as I argued elsewhere, from a study of uniquely Polish suffering and call for revenge into Dziady as a global chronicle of suffering and call for inclusive community. In fact, Rychcik's Wesele has been accused by some theatre critics for just following the tested formula of his previous works. However, as I argued elsewhere, in Dziady the foreignizing effect was facilitated by two over-explored, over-referenced and over-familiar cultural contexts interrogating each other, and by doing so, challenging the audience's ideas on Polishness in the context of what is national and what is foreign, offering unity in suffering as an alternative to action of sufferings. This is not the case in Wesele, as Rychcik sets his staging in Belfast of 1970s. While arguably there is some general awareness of the conflict in Northern Ireland in Poland, the detail and complexity thereof are not part of general knowledge, and this lack of knowledge is, as I will explain, crucial for Rychcik's staging. In fact, from the very beginning, Rychcik reminds the audience they do not know anything about Belfast of 1970s. The program provides detail on the troubles, focusing on the mixed marriage and the Northern Ireland Mixed Marriage Association set up in 1974. Can a wedding change nation? Asks the poster. Polish text in the program is also translated into English, and the characters get new counterparts. The poet in Wyspiański's text based on Kazimierz Przerwa-Tytmajer becomes Seamus Heaney. The matchmaker Klimina is Jean McConville, one of the so-called disappeared. The groom and his family become loyalists. The bride and her family are Catholic. Jewish Rachela is translated into an IRA soldier. In short, the program prepares the audience for an encounter with Rychcik's staging as a translation, a process and an end product that is not only linguistic but mainly historical and cultural. Rychcik's production could be, of course, discussed in the context of adaptation. However, I will follow here Joanna Spoil's point that translation and adaptation, although not synonymous, quote, form a critical productive partnership, end quote, and framing one as the other allows to illuminate complexities of each. In the current context, the term translation draws attention not only to the complex intercultural, intertemporal, and interlingual processes in Rychcik's staging, but most importantly to the tension between foreign and national that underlies translation process, which is critical for my argument. Moreover, the use of translation as a frame and Paul's points are inasmuch appropriate here as Rychcik's production by itself problematizes dichotomies between translation and adaptation. From theoretical point of view, I am interested in Venuti's remark that foreignized translation can, quote, precipitate social change, end quote, through disturbing dominant voices and structures of power, and that its potential of translation lies not in so much in validating the source through its intelligibility to the target audience, but in constructing, quotes, images for foreign cultures, end quote, and the positions of intelligibility for the target audience. In other words, translation can not only impact upon one's perception of a translated culture, but also on how one interacts with this culture and how one's perception of oneself is changed through that translated culture and in position to that translated culture. Venuti's focus is on situation in which foreign source is being translated into native language of the target audience. However, in Rychcik's Wesele, it is the source that is native and familiar to the target audience, and it is translated into a foreign context. So what I'm trying to think about, my question is around, is how such a process or such processes potential, to paraphrase Venuti, to challenge and reconstruct images for native culture and the position of intelligibility, to re-engage the audience with the idea of nation and themselves within that nation. So in fact, I am asking the same question that Rychcik's poster is asking. Can a wedding, or the wedding in that case, change nation? I realize that a 20 minutes paper is not enough to explore this in depth, and that is why I want to focus on Rychcik's use of zgrzyt, okay? And this is a Polish word, what I mean by that is dissonance, static interference, because they reveal that his Wesele does not engage in a discussion on Northern Irish troubles, but uses a translation as a mask to mobilize the process of emotional distancing from the play and its themes, that paradoxically facilitates a process of rediscovering Wesele as a picture of Polish society, a dialogue with ideas on Polish nation, the role of artists and current political conflicts in Poland, in spite of the comments made by some critics that he shied away from it. Rychcik's Wesele is bilingual, Polish and English, and to some degree attempts to reproduce the soundscape of Hiberno-English. In the opening, we see the bride and the journalist awaiting, as we later find out, the groom, so the wedding can happen. They do not look like the traditional Wesele characters. So that lasts for about 2 minutes. And then after those 2 minutes, we find out that not only they don't look like traditional characters, but they also don't sound it. Oh, too much? So when the journalist speaks, he's trying to reproduce the pattern of Northern Irish accent in English. So he doesn't speak with Northern Irish accent, but he's trying to reproduce this going up at the end of sentences. Can I have light, please? Thank you. Okay. This pattern of speech will appear and disappear throughout the performance in speeches of different characters, reminding the audience about the foreign setting. The space does not look like a cottage, but like an Irish pub, especially when the curtain is open. And in fact, the authenticity of the elements of this staging was part of the show's publicity, with the reports on all the efforts the scenographer put to obtain the objects from 1970s. In addition, the first scene is followed by an English language radio announcement. You don't need, this is just sound, so it's...
Ano chciałeś, Mass.
Good afternoon to you all, your favourite Stephen Nolan speaking, and you are listening to BBC Radio Ulster. The weather for Northern Ireland today is looking utterly cool, breezy and wet.
Okay. The radio announcement keeps coming back, reappears in the performance. There are also songs taken from different styles of popular music, all in English, and also some football chants in English that united all the male characters of the play, singing "We're from Belfast," etc. The national Polish dances are translated into traditional Irish dancing. However, as in Wyspiański's Wesele, the authenticity of certain elements is only a mask, and those dissonances, zgrzyty, statics, interference highlight its cracks, through which the otherness of the source sneaks into the space. A careful reader of the program may already spot some inconsistencies. Although the production sets itself in 1974, Kasia, one of the bridesmaids, loves X Factor. Jean Manconville disappeared in 1972. The journalist Stephen Nolan, as the program states, was born in 1973. It is almost as the program comments on the productions itself not knowing about the troubles. This links with a frame of the game that the production sets after the first radio announcement is followed by voice of Stephen Nolan saying 1, 2, 3, now you're moving to Northern Ireland with this sort of fake Polish Northern Irish accent. Later on, the radio announcements are disturbed by statics, as if reminding the audience that Poland is quite far away from Northern Ireland, and so is the source from its translation. The pattern of Northern Irish accents that keeps reappearing does not fit the Polish verse, and in fact, it is a big part that verse plays here. As I argued elsewhere, verse rhythm has potential to highlight a virtual presence of the playwright and remind the audience about the source text that underlines the staging. In this case, this links with the familiarity of the source text, the fact that some of the lines travel from Wesele to everyday Polish, and that the actors speak verse very clearly. The verse rhythm reminds one about the source, and it never fully fits with the translation. In addition, the doggerel rhymes in Rychcik's staging disappear on few occasions, and through their absence, remind one about the difference between the source and translation. For example, during the early conversation that the male characters of the play have about politics, one of the villagers says, "Ino do jakiej bijacki, z takich jak my był Głowacki," making a reference to 18th century Polish hero Bartosz Głowacki, also a peasant. In Rychcik's production, Głowacki is replaced by Bobby Sands, that does not rhyme with bijacki. Later on, the same situation repeats with poet, who says, "W oczach naszych chłop urasta do potęgi króla Piasta," reminding that the legendary Polish king Piast was also once a peasant. In Rychcik's production, however, Piast is replaced with Artur. And again, there is an absence of the rhyme and this dissonance, zgrzyt, that we are encountering, that is even more highlighted by the fact that it is the poet who speaks it. And it is through those cracks, I'm just jumping here, in between the source and translation, that we see in a frame of this zgrzyt, in a frame of this dissonance, a gang rape of one of the bridesmaids, and these are all additions of Rychcik. We see kneecapping of Billy Elliot, that by himself is a dissonance here, whose dance is interrupted by IRA, Rachela, who does not agree with Billy Elliot's challenges of patriarchal ideas of masculinity, a priest who is more interested in the bride or a young girl Isha than a conversation with the groom, and a young girl Isha giving a birth to a child while still wearing her roller skates and short skirt. It is clear that Isha has no idea what is happening to her as she continues to ask to be allowed to dance while her mother is trying to put her to sleep. And as Jasiek in the finale delivers the lines of Seamus Heaney's Digging in Polish translation, one may read it not only in the context of the responsibility of the artist to be a golden whore waking up Poland perhaps from this Kaczyński's dream, but also in the context of a silent digging audience witnessed a short time before that, when female characters buried the body of the grandfather killed by the bride for raping her bridesmaids. Patriarchy, violence, rape, disregard and silencing of women become part of this image of nation that Rychcik's Wesele creates. Coincidentally, each of these is an argument used by Polish right-centered newspapers and government and organizations against accepting refugees from Syria, What a dissonance. Thank you.